I'm excited to welcome you all back to City Hall today. It was 19 weeks ago today that I stood here with this team of experts behind me and introduced the Housing Quality Task Force, 21 local specialists who brought a broad, diverse set of expertise, committed amount of time, 90 business days, to be exact, to this cause. If you remember, I asked them to develop a list of short-term recommendations that I could implement here at the city that would improve housing quality for residents in Rochester. And I'm excited to confirm that one day before their 90th business day, so actually on the 89th business day, just this last Thursday, I received the recommendations which we will share today. I want to extend my sincere appreciation to everyone who served on the task force, and particularly to Aqua Porter, Executive Director of RMAPI, the Rochester Monroe County Anti-Poverty Initiative, and Kira Wheeler, the city's Manager of Housing, who served as co-chairs. Aqua has a very busy job in our community. And, but I guess when the mayor calls, she stepped up, so I can't thank her enough. She does a lot for this community, and for her to be able to come up was great. And and I tell you, you can blame Kim Smith, because she kept saying, you gotta get Aqua involved. So Kim is partially responsible for that. I recognize the commitment all of you made to this effort, and I'd like to have, and just so you know, the mayor stayed out of it. I was not sticking my nose. They can all be my witnesses into the work that they were doing. I really tried to wait till they gave me the report. I got the report for the first time. But the main idea here is and I'll talk further after they lay out some of the recommendations they're making, is that we know this is not going to solve the world. This is not a panacea, this is not a broad brush, but this was very narrow to say, Mayor Evans, here are some steps that you can take in your administration to try to improve housing quality in Rochester. So with that, I want to welcome Aqua and Carol to the podium to share a few words on the process and the recommendations that they've put together, and then I'm also going to have Kim Smith talk about how we will continue to engage with the community as we continue to talk about housing broadly within the city. So, Carol and Aqua.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity. I want to reiterate the recognition of so many people who gave a lot of their time and their expertise to this process. We had members from very diverse backgrounds, and you can imagine very different opinions, but we held firm to weekly meetings for anywhere from 90 minutes to 2 hours for the last 19 weeks. In addition, we conducted sub-team meetings as well, and recommendation review meetings. Given the strength of the task force members whom the mayor pulled together and the amount of time we spent together, we got to explore a wide variety of topics with a focus on improving housing quality for the citizens of Rochester. Of course, we had lively debates, and we did not always agree. But we made a commitment to staying focused on our charter and coming to compromise when needed and necessary. I'm pleased to report that with 1 day to spare, we met our deadline and provided actionable recommendations to the mayor. I'm very proud of the recommendations that we ultimately produced. However, to share more details on those recommendations, let me introduce my co-chair and the city's housing manager, Kira Wheeler.
Thank you, Aqua. I too want to thank all of our task force members. This was an amazing and important process, and everyone added significant value to the final recommendations. The document we're sharing today includes 16 immediate and short-term recommendations that the task force believes that the city should implement immediately. These recommendations fall into 5 distinct categories or themes. Each theme has 2 to 5 specific recommendations or recommended actions. Number 1, code enforcement. 2, facilitating responsible ownership through the land bank, foreclosures, and a building registry. 3, repair and improvement programs. 4, increasing supply of quality housing, and lastly, improving communication and education. I'm happy to say when we presented these actions to the mayor on last Thursday, as you heard, on the 89th day, he was not only very receptive, but was also very clear that these things will start immediately, very quickly. I do want to recognize and acknowledge that there were recommendations that did not fit our charter, either because they were longer term or outside the purview of City Hall. These ideas, however, have been all captured, and the entire task force expects that these ideas and the spirit of our work will continue in conversation and action by others in our community, locally, regionally, and statewide. I think I speak for the entire Housing Task Force when I say, thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity to come together and help make a difference in Rochester. Thank you. Mayor?
Thank you, Carol. And again, the work continues because a 90-day task force, as I said, isn't going to solve all of the housing challenges that we have in Rochester. And there's still so much stuff that has to be considered at the state level, the federal level, and all of those things. But I want to again just thank you, Carol and Aqua, for the work that the task force has done in leading it. And I know that this will make a positive impact on housing in our community. I commit to embracing this work. The way that this report is laid out, folks at City Hall now will know what their tasks are, and we will assign those to them. I want to make sure that my milestones are set and that we don't dither in terms of moving forward on these things. And I'll give you an example. For instance, the Corporation Council recently posted to expand our legal team to include an attorney dedicated to housing court. That's never been done before in the history of the city of Rochester. We also have, I'm looking at the deputy mayor back there, a cross-functional team to ensure that code and legal are working together. Because we need to send a message in our community that we are not going to tolerate dilapidated, rickety, broken down structures that any of us that are standing here would want to live in. If we wouldn't live in it, I don't expect my constituents to live in it. But the question is, what are we going to do about it? And the answer is that housing attorney will help us. We're going to have zero tolerance for that in our community. And that's what I think, that's one thing I think everybody in the task force agreed on, from what I understand. So that's important. And I believe that, you know, I'm known for being impatient. It's a good quality, but it's also a bad quality. But I am impatient. And I think that sometimes in our community, we have to be impatient when it relates to the health, safety, and life of our citizens. And housing is one of those things. All the data is clear that if people are in good, stable, quality housing, they keep their jobs longer, their kids do better in school, they have better health outcomes, they have less stress. So we know how important housing is. And in the city of Rochester, I want to increase home ownership. But we have to recognize a large portion of our residents are renters. So if they are renters, we have to make sure that they are living in properties that are up to code, safe, and equitable. If they're not that way, the question is what the city can do about it. And we will use every tool in our toolbox to be able to do that. So I want to thank, again, the task force members, many of whom are here today, for all of their hard work. I've spoken with Councilmember Smith, and she's going to help continue this conversation about housing. I don't want people to think that this 90-day report stops all of the other conversations that are happening. Many people here are also a part of RMAPI's housing task force. There's so many other groups that are doing work here. This is just me raising my hand saying, community, this is the part the mayor is going to do. But there's a lot more stuff at the state level and with community-based organizations, with other conversations, with landlords, with tenants. All that stuff still needs to happen. But my first 6 months, I wanted to be clear that I needed to make sure that I had a blueprint on things that we could do immediately. So I want Kim to talk about some of the ideas that we've been talking about in terms of making sure that we continue this conversation on housing and using some of our city resources to have folks gather to continue the conversation. Councilmember Kim Smith.
Good morning, and I will keep this brief because without the input of other council colleagues, I don't have many details to offer you yet. But I really appreciate, I want to say thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, for taking a very active approach to addressing the housing issues in our community. As the Mayor stated, housing is healthcare, housing is public safety, housing is what makes the quality of our life. And so I don't take this charge very lightly, and so moving forward, I also want to acknowledge and thank the Mayor for acknowledging, number one, that this is just the first step, and that there is much more that needs to be done. And number two, for acknowledging that any effective process must include content and context experts. And so we have heard from the context experts, and the mayor is going to begin implementing those recommendations. But now, the piece that I and some specific colleagues are most excited about, Vice President Mary Lupien, Councilmember Stanley Martin, I thought I saw somewhere, we are very excited about engaging the context experts, those who are directly impacted by these housing issues and those with expert lived experiences in how we can move forward to address the housing issues in Rochester. So leaving after this press conference today, we will have 3 immediate actions that we will do. We will get with other additional council colleagues, and we will come up with some logistics around how these public comment periods are going to work, because we know that the housing issues vary according to where you live. So we want to make sure that we engage everyone from every quadrant of this city. So after we get with other council colleagues and work through the logistics, we will put out a press release to let you know when the upcoming dates for those forums will be. And number 2, we are also going to engage the housing organizers who are on the ground and will help us mobilize and drive people to these events. And finally, number 3, we are also additionally going to ask the mayor if he can look into his budget and feed people as they show up to these events. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's food, I know people will come. That is always one of the things. I have a very important meeting that starts momentarily, so I'm only going to be able to take a brief questions regarding another issue that's important to my heart around food stuff. So, Deanna.
I want to ask you first, notably, 2 members of the task force are here. They stepped down on the 14th.
We got a lot of members of the task force that aren't here, but go ahead.
But these members publicly stepped down on the 14th. The tenant union representative and the homeless representative. I was wondering what you had to say.
Well, no, I think that I'm a bridge builder, and part of building a bridge is sometimes you build a bridge, right? But the bridge is always open for people to come back over the bridge. So we will continue to work with all task force members. I never give up on working with anybody, because you know what? Sometimes you get up from I've gotten up from many tables before, but guess what? Sometimes I come back, and a seat is always available for anybody that wants to come sit at Malik Evans's table. Even if I'm dining alone, that chair is always open. And who are you? Yes, sir.
Can you speak to why there are no expanded eviction protections?
Well, I mean, we focused on things that we could do from the city perspective, but obviously we support expanded eviction protections. It's not stuff that the city can address alone. We have to address that with our state partners and others. So that's where the advocacy piece comes in, and also some of the long-term things that we want to work on. But this task force was charged with what are the things right now that are within the city's purview that we can affect. I sometimes get lucky in that, not lucky or unlucky, that people think that sometimes I have power to do things that I don't. What I do have power to do is to advocate. But the stuff that's within the mayor's purview are things that you see that are within these recommendations. Yes?
Can you just talk about why it's important to have a legal representative, or have a part of the city's legal team in this?
That to me, that's one of the most important pieces, because that is what gives it teeth. That is what gives us the ability to enforce things. If someone has a property, and this is just an example, and if they have tons and tons of code violations and are not paying attention to what the city has told them to do to fix that property, we have recourse in court to not only be able to go after that landlord, to make sure that they fix the property, but if the landlord continues to do that, we have the ability to put them in jail for 30 days. I'm not saying that that's what we want to do, because I'm not in favor of putting anyone in jail for, things that are simple and should be able to be fixed, but that's a tool that we have. That's something we've never done. Do we want to do that? No. Will we do that? Yeah. Because we need to send a message that we can't have people living in substandard housing.
How many are there a lot of those landlords?
There's more than I would like, and many of them are out of town. Many of them are from out of town, and many of them get into the business. And I come from a banking background, and they skimp. They don't want to hire a good property manager. They don't want to hire someone to be able to fix these things. So what happens if you have an illness in your body and you say, I'm not worried about it, I'll worry about it later. Well, same thing with housing. A hole gets bigger, pipes burst, you have all those things, and then it becomes expensive, so you keep putting it off, but you still need to make money to meet the mortgage payment, so you have people stay in there. That causes problems. We want to end that. We want to end that. We want to say to people, if you can't afford to run this property, sell it to someone else who's going to be a good landlord. We want to make sure we do that. Deanna, I'll come back to you in a second. April? You got to speak up. Correct.
When did the 90 days start? Because the task force was announced in February.
We said 90 business days. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Got it? Okay. Deanna.
So I've read the 16 recommendations. They're substantive, they're legal. So I'm wondering what you tackle first.
Well, the first one is the legal. To me, that is a no-brainer. We're working on getting the lawyer hired. I think that is key. We have housing court, which is already up and running. I think that is absolutely one of the most important ones we can move on. We want to be able to do that. And the other thing we want to make sure that we do is that as we hear of properties that are not being taken care of, that if we have to step in and do that, that we do that, but that we also hold the landlord accountable, particularly for properties that endanger the health and safety of individuals. We should not have any of those properties in the city of Rochester, period. Period. Furnace is not working. That type of stuff, we cannot tolerate. And if it means us coming in and fixing it, charging the landlord, we're going to do that. But we're going to get our money back because we got to protect the taxpayers.
That is the primary complaint that I have heard.
Yeah.
Over and over.
Oh, yeah.
Is code enforcement not having teeth?
Well, it's going to have teeth now. Not only is it going to have teeth, it's going to have saber-toothed tiger teeth. The question is are we going to use it? And I'm telling you now here, we're going to use it. Yes. Our corporation counsel's not here. Oh, he's over there. I'm not messing around. And we've already done this on the commercial side. We don't put out press releases for some of the properties that we've already shut down since January. But council heard me talk about this during the budget session. We are not going to tolerate it. If they wouldn't do it in Pittsford or Brighton or Henrietta or other places, why should we tolerate it here in the city of Rochester? We're not going to. We're not going to tolerate it. And this legal mechanism is our biggest, that really is our biggest stick. But we also want to carry carrots. We also want to hold up landlords that are doing good things and say, you know, Mr. Evans, he's a good landlord here. there's a property over here these folks can't handle. Will you be willing to come in and take over this property so that way it can get up to the standard as your other properties are because this person can't do that? We want to do that as well. We want to do that as well, but we are going to use the stick when we need to use it. So we will do that. All right, I'm going to take one last question, then I got to run. Someone who didn't ask one yet, then I'll go back to the Beacon. All right, Beacon, you got the last question. And you got to speak up, because this atrium is very, yeah.
The report mentions using the zoning alignment project to expand the availability of housing. And some portion of that would be qualified, some portion would be market rate. Can you speak to what portion for either side?
Again, your voice trailed off. You got to speak up a little bit more.
Some portion of that expanded housing would be income qualified, some would be market rate. Can you speak to if you're targeting a certain percentage one way or another, or if you're mostly looking?
I think that's early. We're still looking at that, obviously, but we want to make sure that we want to make sure that we have an affordable city. We don't want to become a San Francisco. Nice place to visit, but probably none of us in this room can afford to live there. I love San Francisco. I shouldn't say that I don't love, but we have to make sure that we have good, quality, affordable housing in places, and we have to make sure that we do it within our zoning code. And the reason why the zoning alignment project is in there, because that's a big project that's going on right now that has a lot of conversation. The zoning project probably won't be done until, who knows when that's a year, so we're like a year out from that. So this gives us, Councilmember Smith mentioned the community conversations that we're still having. So a recommendation like that will require a little bit more conversation, but we didn't want to discount that, hey, there's this big zoning project that's been going on for the last 4 years. That's why I'm assuming that the team put that in there. That's right. Okay, I want to thank everyone for coming today. We will continue to have